Hello and welcome to the Nashville Entrepreneur Center and to our speaker series. We are delighted to have a guest here today that I have thoroughly enjoyed getting to talk with. And honestly, as we were talking, I'm like, oh my gosh, you've got to come and speak to our community because he just has such a cool story. And so Cesar with Gibson. And first, I just want to say on behalf of Nashville, thank you. Gibson is clearly a brand that is iconic, and the fact that you all chose to remain in Nashville, we appreciate. So Thank you. So I want to welcome you to the Nashville Entrepreneur Center. As some of you may know, we're a 501c3 here in Nashville, and we're here to connect the entrepreneurs in our community to the resources they need to help increase their probability of success. And by entrepreneurs, I mean everywhere from those that have started a business all the way through those who have exited businesses. And so, and I know in looking at our virtual audience and internally, we have a mixture here with us today. So we are thrilled. And so with that, I am going to turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself and talk a little bit, and then we're just going to do a Q&A. We have Shelby, who's manning the virtual world, so any questions, please just, let her know, and she knows to interrupt me. Rather than saving everything till the end, I prefer more of a dialogue. And then the same for those in the audience. Anybody has a question, feel free, and I'll make sure that you get called on as well. So with that, thank you.
Thanks. So Cesar, for lack of a better word, the Gibson guy. You talked about Nashville. For us, it was very important when we did this. First, we did a bit of an evaluation. Where are we going to operate from? But that was a very quick and fast exercise that led us to say we need to double down on Nashville. We have been in Nashville since the mid-'70s, when initially we started amplifying production of particularly one model that is a very successful model for us, which is called the Les Paul. We started doing more of the Les Paul models in Nashville, and then as the level of craftsmanship here was coming to us then, or to us, Gibson in the past, the decision was made to start moving more production to Nashville, and then by 1984, 100% of Gibson guitars were being made here in Nashville. And so that was a transition from Kalamazoo, Michigan, to Nashville. We also then, about 35 years ago, acquired a company called Flatiron Mandolins, which is based in Bozeman, Montana. And that's where we make 100% of our acoustic guitars today. Also because the conditions there are very good, the dry environment with the wood, with a certain level of moisture that comes in, it dries up to the point where we can make acoustic guitars in a more efficient way there, so we've kept it there. But we're headquartered in Nashville. We bought the company 2.5 years ago. We moved our headquarters from near the airport to Cummins Station, which is where we are today. The factories remain where they are with Gibson USA and the custom shop near the airport. And we have built now a global distribution center in that campus. We have a guitar manufacturing facility, our biggest, which is called Gibson USA. We have the custom shop, which is where we make our historic collection. And we make customized guitars, like the one we made for the Nashville Soccer Club. And the distribution center is right in there, in that campus. We have a pickup shop that services our facilities where we make electronics. And now we've just finished building a 10,000 square foot area in Cummins Station that we're going to call the Gibson Garage, and we're probably going to open in June. That is a full experience place to come and learn everything about Gibson, Epiphone, Kramer. We just bought Mesa Boogie, an amplifier brand, and KRK. And so that will be an experience place, live stage, live streaming, customization, acoustic lounge, private artist lounge that will act as a green room when we're doing live events. And we're going to unveil all of that with a pre-recorded show that we're working on right now with multiple artists. So we've made double-digit millions in new investments in Nashville, probably close to about 20 million now, in some in our factories and investing in our factories, but at the same time investing in our new headquarters, investing in the Gibson Garage, investing in the distribution center, which is a very big, very impressive facility where we distribute everywhere around the world. So, and I personally moved to Nashville with my family after commuting for almost 2 years since we acquired the company. So we've been here now since the beginning. Well, it's going to be almost a year with my family here and the kids in school and all that comes with it.
And you haven't lived here outside of the pandemic, though?
I've been here, living here on and off and going back home to Florida on the weekends for 2 years before that. Mm-hmm. And in April is going to be 1 year since we've been here with the family, and this is home.
Okay, wonderful. All right, well, clearly in listening to all the different things that are going on, entrepreneurship seems to run in your blood. So can you take us back and talk a little bit about yourself?
Okay.
And, where you grew up, where you went to school?
Yeah.
Your business journey.
Yeah. Don't love talking about myself, but I'll try. I'm Armenian, born in Argentina, third generation born in Argentina from great grandparents who, as kids, escaped the genocide and landed some in France, some in LA, and some in Argentina at the time because they were a very peaceful country, and so they were looking for a place to live that had no chances of getting involved in a conflict. And so and it was a very wealthy country, not today, but it was back then. And so I grew up there, and my father, my background, and you see it's a common theme between Armenians, they're hustlers. They came in to different places with nothing in their pockets, and so they started from zero. And I grew up in a very humble environment where my parents didn't have money to put me in music school or buy me a guitar, but we had a Spanish guitar, and so I grew up learning how to play with that. And then over time, I started teaching myself, and then I was able to get music classes in the school I was going to, where they started offering classes. But I started working from a very young age, just going to work with my dad. And so at 11 years old, I used to go on the weekends and sell. So I would have a price list of the things that he was selling, and some of the wholesalers would come in, and I would give them the prices, and they would say, "What's our discount?" And it was like, "There's no discount." And they couldn't argue with an 11-year-old. So that was a successful strategy at the time, and I kept that going. And then I started playing tennis. So I had exposure. I got drafted by a place in Florida that gave me access to come to the U.S. and start experiencing life here and competing in the juniors tour and then futures and satellites. And when I came here, I was like, wow, this place is amazing compared to what I was used to in Argentina. So I knew that I wanted to come back. Mm-hmm. And sort of through my education prioritization from my parents, I was able then to come apply here, get a loan from the University of Chicago, and come do my graduate studies at the University of Chicago. And they were grateful enough at the time to give me a loan because as an international student, you needed a U.S. citizen to guarantee the loan. Okay. And I didn't have that. Mm-hmm. So I still came and I did my meeting with them and I pitched them that they should give it to me, and for some crazy reason they did. Mm-hmm. And so I did get the loan to go to the University of Chicago, and then from there, that's really where my career started in the business of acquiring businesses to turn them around and put them back into growth. And I started doing that at the private investment arm of Deutsche, mm-hmm. Deutsche Bank in London first. And then I came to New York, and I moved between London and New York a couple of times. And then I was there for many years, and then I was able to, with some of the team from Deutsche, go to UBS to start that business. Now I'm way later. And then I took my team from UBS, and I started my own business called Melody Capital Partners to do the same thing. And so for 18 years, that's what I've been doing. I've been working with companies, whether it's investing or acquiring them or doing a change of control where we saw an opportunity to buy debt to then effectuate a change of control, take over the company and put it back into growth. Now at the same time, my musical journey continued, and when I was finally able to afford an electric guitar, I bought myself a guitar in the US after winning a tournament in Florida. I went with that money to buy a guitar. I couldn't afford the one that I wanted, which was a Gibson Les Paul, but I bought some other guitar that I then took back to Argentina where there were currency controls. I was able to sell that guitar for double the money. So I paid $700, I sold it for $1,400, and when I came back to the US to play tennis again, I bought my Les Paul.
Wow.
And that really was what, I was 13 years old at the time, and that's where everything starts for me. When I finally have that electric guitar and I start, from my personal influences were more hard rock and heavy metal, and I wanted to be able to play what Tony Iommi was doing, or what Slash was doing, or James Hetfield and Kirk Hammett, Metallica, and Alice in Chains. I mean, I liked that music, and I started getting into bands like that and Tool, and even though I was classically trained, because I had a Spanish guitar, and the only lessons I could get for free in school were classic. Mm-hmm. But ironically, that was the best background for playing the instrument.
Why is that?
Because I feel it's a more intricate way of playing, which is without a pick, it's with fingers, and it's heavy chord progressions and things that normally you wouldn't learn if you just go straight with an electric guitar. So I'm grateful that my parents didn't have money to buy me an electric guitar for a couple of years, and I had to learn that way. Mm-hmm. And fast forward, I became obsessed with learning about guitars. And when I started making some money in the business world, I started buying guitars and opening them up and looking inside and see what's in, how they were made. And I started accumulating an incredible amount of useless knowledge that I can now put to work. Mm-hmm. And when we bought Gibson, I already had about 80 Gibsons in my collection. So it was an obsession, not just music and guitars, but Gibson guitars for me.
Okay.
Always
and then
been.
What prompted you to, people buy guitars, but opening them up and were you trying to figure out the secret, like how they were made, what made them so special, or what was the thought process there?
Yeah, I wanted to see inside and see how they were made and what went into them. Mm-hmm. And I tried to make my own, I built my own guitar, and I copied a Les Paul, and it sounded terrible, so I gave up. But yeah, it just was interesting in what's inside, what are the types of woods that are being used, what are the electronics, potentiometers, capacitors, what's making it sound one way or a different way, or how is it that some guitars you turn the volume down a little bit and they shut down, and others, instead of shutting down, the output stays the same, but they clean up in sound. Why is that? And why does one fingerboard sound brighter or darker than another one? And what are the different tone woods and the different frets and the fret wire, and why does one type of fret wire makes it easier to bar a chord than others? And so I started learning just out of curiosity. And I always tell my mom, it's amazing how that immense amount of totally useless knowledge now I can put to work.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's fascinating because you meet different entrepreneurs, and some of them have started businesses that align with their passion, and then some start businesses just to solve a problem, or they see an opportunity and they go for it. But clearly this is a passion of yours that you were then able to align to create or build upon a successful company.
That's why when I started my own business, I called it Melody Capital Partners first, and then the most recent iteration after selling some of my stakes in that, I called it Octave. It's always been musical references to me. Mm-hmm. And we did things across different industries, but when this came up, and I met with the prior owners. I was introduced in 2009 somebody said, you should meet this guy that has a lot of Gibsons and he's crazy, and that was me. And so I met the prior owner, and to me it was more about the passion to see Gibson succeed. You know, Gibson to me was this iconic brand that has been pretty much the sound of every genre of music now for 127 years. And so I wanted to see it do well. Mm-hmm. And so in 2012, when the prior owner decided to go into consumer audio, we met and presented the thesis and wanted an investor to back it. And I thought it was a crazy idea, just taking an American icon that is making these incredibly crafted instruments, and that's the core, to go into this very low margin, high volume, the chase down to the bottom of consumer audio, and especially at the time where wireless was already winning, and the thesis was to go acquire Philips and Pioneer Consumer Audio, Onkyo, TIAC, Woox, all businesses that were in decline mode. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was crazy, so I said no. But he issued a bond to go buy those businesses off the strength of Gibson, the guitars. Mm-hmm. And so inside of that investment vehicle that I had called Melody Capital Partners, I started buying some of that. A bond is a security, so it's almost like a public stock that it requires the issuer to issue financial statements on a quarterly basis. So I wanted to get those to see what was going on. That's why I bought some. And then as some of the issues that we had originally identified, and for the reason we said no, they started showing up, then the bonds started trading down. And so we started buying more and more. And so I reached my limit, and I called a friend of mine from a firm called KKR. Him and I have done a lot of these things together, and we are both music and guitar and Gibson fanatics, and we played in a band out of passion for playing live together and did club scene in London and in New York. I called him and I said, you got to look at the thesis of what's going on here and remove yourself from the emotional connection we have to the brand, and let me walk you through the thesis. And so they came on board and they started buying debt to the point where they were the vast majority of it. And it got to the point where what initially was, well, maybe we could do this, to like, it's happening and we're going to own it, and let's organize ourselves because we are going to have this incredible opportunity to own one of the most iconic companies to us in history, and we have an opportunity and an obligation to do justice to the brand and to pay tribute to the past and be good stewards of the future of the brand. And so I feel like I'm still living a dream.
Mm-hmm. No, that's exciting. So you all decide you're going to do it, and then is it clear that you're going to be working with it? Because I would assume in your other ventures you didn't necessarily platoon in and actually work the day in and day out.
No. So I was going to just stay as an investor and on the board, and then we reached out to this incredible guy, James Curley, who was at Levi's, and we said, and we knew of him. We knew that he was a music lover and passionate about music, and I met with him. So we said, let's meet, and I went to meet him. I went to San Francisco, and we met at Levi's, incognito, but we met at Levi's, and I remember, we still talk about this to this day. We met at 2 p.m. in his office at Levi's, and next thing we know, it's midnight, and we're doing tequila shots. So I knew he was the right guy, and he said yes. So we hired him as our CEO, and then I started educating him on guitars and the process and dealers and vintage and new and how we should be making things, and let's make sure we do this, and we organize an original collection so we have a good representative portfolio of the golden era, but also pay attention to the historic collection in the custom shop. We need to name it that way. And JC at one point in all of these meetings, he says, you have to stay. He's like, I can't do this on my own. So that was the first conversations we had about that, and I had to transition a lot of my responsibilities back to my partners. on the other businesses that we either started or bought. So was able to do that, and now here I am.
And then what is your role with Gibson?
So I run there's a couple of things that it all starts with the actual instruments. And so what we've designed is we call them our labs, where we design, create, and conceive what is it, where we're going and what we're going to be making. So the Gibson labs, it then moves into what we call product development, real development of our calendarization. What are we going to be doing across brands, electric, acoustic, different categories. So we create that roadmap of product development. I run that. Then we have the brands, Gibson, Epiphone, Kramer, KRK, and we just bought Mesa Boogie amplifiers. So I run our brands, our marketing teams, which I have that spread around the world. Then we organized something called our cultural influence team, which is how we engage and connect with our artists and work with them. And then we launched our own network, which is in that cultural influence ecosystem, which is Gibson TV. We launched that a year ago. And then we have Gibson Gives, which is our foundation. And that's all in that bucket of cultural influence, which is under my purview. And then we have direct-to-consumer or omni experience across different channels for all of our brands and globally. And then finally, after-sales service. And so I've got a handle on that. And then we have a chief production guy who runs our facilities and makes what we ask him to make, and he comes with an amazing background and experience. We have a commercial leader that runs our sales teams around the world. And we have our CFO Plus, who runs not just all of our finances, but also enterprise solutions in service to the rest of the teams.
All right. So do you feel like you were just destined to be in this role?
No.
Okay.
I think I found myself in a very lucky situation of being in the right place at the right time and having got access to financial statements because I was able to as an investor. Mm-hmm. And I was at the right place at the right time, and then we saw it and we said, well, let's make sure we make it happen. Mm-hmm. So I think it was more about the intersection of me with the Gibson situation, being in a position where I could influence as an investor, having the right connections, and then putting the right team together to actually make it happen. And it was a 3-year process to make it happen because it was a hostile situation. It wasn't a friendly one. Okay. So it's not like the prior owner wanted to give it to us. Mm-hmm. He just didn't pay the mortgage.
Got it. All right, so as you look forward, what do you see as far as the future for Gibson?
Well, we started with being a guitar company again. Mm-hmm. And so for the last 2 years, we've been really working hard to be a guitar company again. And we sold all the non-core assets. So everything that was acquired that put the company in the obstacle course that we went through, that's all gone. Okay. And so we went through the bankruptcy process, reorganized, sold all the non-core assets. Over the last 2 years, we're pretty much done. We just finished selling Baldwin pianos. And now we are a guitar company again. We are seen as having organized in service to our history and looking at the future and how we have our collections organized, how we're working with artists. So I think we're on a right path there. So first was focus on our core. Mm-hmm. Then it was now into how can we expand for a little more, and we have Pro Audio, and we went into expanding that line of in-studio equipment with KRK. And we brought Kramer back, we brought Epiphone back, so we relaunched the brands and we relaunched the collections. And then we said, okay, how do we explore a little bit? And we did, and we went into, all right, let's go get, the opportunity came to go acquire Mesa Boogie through actually one of my relationships with the founder, who's still around and he's with us. Randy Smith, who founded Mesa Boogie 50 years ago. So we ended up closing that acquisition, which is great because now, as we think about the future for us, it's all about share of sound. And in order to really own the share of sound, we need to be able to amplify our guitars. And so now we've got Mesa Boogie. So that was the first thing, I think, to answer your question, is that's directionally where we're going, is share of sound. But we really want to be the most relevant, played, and loved music company in the world. And for that, we need to enter innovation and we need to enter influence. And the way that we're doing that is by setting up our labs, from the sound lab to the tone lab to the prototype labs, where we're now designing new things. And inside of the prototype labs, we've created an artist alliance and an artist lab. So now we're working with, whether it's Tony Iommi or Kirk Hammett now, or Jerry Cantrell, and we just got Dave Mustaine, and we're working with all these artists to design the future state of playability features. And then when it comes to influencing, now we're on to media and entertainment and engagement and being culturally connected to music. And that's why we launched Gibson TV. 1 year ahead, thinking about where we were going. Whether it's Gibson TV and all of our locations around the world that in the past were just transactional places for artists to come in, private, now they are actually TV studios where we're creating content. And we just syndicated and sold distribution rights to one of our original programming called The Scene, where we go to different cities and we capture the most iconic music places, whether it's a record store, a record label, or a venue. We've been capturing that, and now it's going to be distributed nationally beyond just Gibson TV.
Such as in Nashville, Station N?
We did this exactly. You saw Station N in Nashville.
Right.
We're going to do the Gibson Garage in Nashville. We did Third Man Records. We did United Record Pressing in Nashville. So those are things that are going to be part of The Scene in different places.
Okay.
But we take a cinematic approach, Hollywood style. I hired a crew, producer, director. It's all shot in 4K. And it's been very successful, but it's all part of influence. So media, TV, entertainment, and I didn't say it, but maybe Gibson Records.
Okay. All right. So, any question there? So when you say Gibson Records?
I don't know what you're talking about.
All right. I want to dig, but I won't. John.
Cesar, I would love for you to describe kind of the hot mess that you guys walked into.
Oh, yeah.
And kind of what were the things that you did to kind of get the ship righted, to get right with the people and whatnot? Because it was not an easy thing to do, and I think that would be interesting to hear of that. That's a great question. I'm going to try to keep it short because the mess was very big and it was across different things. So the first mess was the financial mess, which was having acquired businesses and overpaid for businesses using leverage, borrowing money, not being able to repay it. And so the first one was equitizing our debt to take over that and wipe everybody else out. That's the first mess. So as the secured creditor, wiping out all the unsecured, equitizing our debt, and taking ownership of the company. Second was selling all those non-core assets. So that took us a while to organize a sales process and get rid of all of that. I would say that most importantly was the internal way of working was a big mess. Every factory was its own business, basically, run separately, competing with each other. There was no organization in service to the brands. Rather, if somebody's Gibson USA, our factory, was one thing, the Gibson Custom Shop was another thing, Gibson Montana was called instead of acoustic was another thing. They would all try to come up with things to compete with each other. They had their own ways of working. They would try to do their own marketing. It was just a toxic environment. And
and the leadership was such that it was always very, I guess, it was a dictatorship. It was a dictatorship with, I wouldn't say bad intentions, but with a very bad, I guess, thesis on how to run the business. And so there was constantly a revolving door of people. Now, the good thing is, in the factories, because they were separated from the headquarters, we still have a lot of craftsmen and women that have been there for 20, 25, 30, in some cases 40 years, and they've just put up with it. And we changed all of that, and we basically put everything under one company and organized everything under individual. So instead of having different manufacturing teams and different marketing teams and competing with each other, we created teams in service to all of our brands and all of our categories, and we brought everybody working together. For example, product development is all, and the labs are all one. So now we can see how the power of our brand brings a seamless and symbiotic portfolio architecture where everything starts to make sense, where there is an original collection and then there's a modern collection that we make, whether it's electric or acoustic. There is a historic collection where we do recreations of the original golden era instruments across electric and acoustic, and then there's a custom shop modern collection, and it all kind of stacks up in that portfolio architecture, and then we create demand across the brands and categories under a single team. And it's the ironic thing is that when we took over, the sum of the parts were less than the parts themselves, right? So there was negative synergy when we took over, and then we organized in a way that we have in a relatively quick, within a year, we had positive synergy. And people were excited to be part of Gibson. Whereas in the past, there was this it was run by fear.
Jane, we do have a couple questions from the chat as well. Cesar, thank you so much for being here. Our chat's blowing up with some questions for you, so I'll start with the first one. This is from Nathan Morgan. He says, tell us about the Gibson Garage and what you envision for it this year and next year.
The Gibson Garage is an experience place. So now that you know that the garage exists, the question wouldn't really work. But the exercise I normally do is, where do you go to learn to get the Gibson experience? And I ask that question, and normally every single time I get different answers of dealers. I like Carter's, I like Rumble Seat, or I like Guitar Center. So Gibson to this day doesn't own it. We don't own the experience. And so the Gibson Garage is an experiential place where our brands are represented, where we're going to be doing live shows, where we're doing lessons, where we're going to be doing entertainment, where we're going to bring artists in. You can go customize the acoustic lounge, custom shop lounge, and it's a pretty big place. It's almost 10,000 square feet. It's in Cumming Station. It's in the heart of Nashville, and we needed to have a place like that is a game changer in the industry. It's crazy to me that in the guitar industry that doesn't exist. Not us, not Fender, not Martin, not Taylor, unless you go to their factory and they might have a cool museum or something like that. But the place doesn't exist. In any other industry, you have a Nike, town, or you have the Apple store, the flagships, or you have a place where you can go experience the brand and what they offer. And in this industry, it didn't exist. So we're disrupting it a little bit by doing that, and it's less about retail. It's really more about the experience for us and making it one that we can be delivering just all kinds of programming and entertainment And I think the evolution of the Gibson Garage will be also as a test platform for new innovations and new initiatives and new things we want to get into. And so we're going to start with Nashville and then potentially in the future go to a couple of other locations.
No, I would think with us being Music City and all the guitar players in this community and people that flock here, it seems, you know, as you're saying it, it's like, wow, I can't believe no other brand
Came
and/or
and
Gibson
did it here.
ever did it. And so that's fabulous.
There were Gibson locations. There was one in Opryland in the past, but they were mediocre at best. And so we said we have to do it right. We have to invest the capital. We've got to we just hired the head of all retail from Tom Ford. We just relocated him from New York. We said we need to bring a ninja, an experienced ninja. And then we can hire the people that know specs and guitars. That's great. Those are going to be the pros on the floor, but we need an experienced ninja. And this guy that recently joined us comes from taking Tom Ford into the next level over the last 10 years. And so we're going to take that very seriously. And then I think it's going to be a great launch platform for a lot of things we have planned. So I'm really excited about the Gibson Garage. It's been a very big investment. We're planning to open it up in June if COVID permits.
Right.
But in the meantime, between now and then, we're going to be doing a lot of filming in the Gibson Garage. We're going to launch Guitar of the Week, which is a global giveaway, just to give away guitars and get people engaged and watch. And it's hosted by Mark Agnesi, who's super engaging and entertaining. You've seen the scene with him.
Exactly.
And that's going to be Guitar of the Week filmed there every week. So we're going to start that process as well. And then the scene is going to be filmed at the Gibson Garage. We just did in the private artist lounge. We just did something for the Nashville Soccer Club. And so we're going to open it up to our partners to use it as content places and to host events. It's not going to be open to the public to do that, but with our partners, we're going to engage them in bringing them in and having access to this. And we did a partnership with the city. We just signed a 3-year extended partnership with the city of Nashville to make it a destination. And we're working with all the local hotel concierges and the record labels, and we're going to have a presence at the airport that's going to be all about the Gibson Garage.
Oh, that's fabulous. No, again, as someone that's been here for quite a while, thank you. So, Shelby, other questions?
Yes, we have another one. This is a direct-to-consumer question from Sam. He says, I've been following your store in Reverb. It's great. How do you go about assessing e-commerce platforms for getting your instruments direct to consumers? Size, audience, demographic, other?
Yeah, great question. So the Gibson Garage is direct to consumer. I mean, it'll have a retail component. So our aspiration and objective is to deliver the best experience that anybody could have physically. When it comes to online, we've been working now for several months on a complete redo of our websites. That's not live yet. It's coming. It's centered around the experience of shopping on our website and engaging in our website and watching content on our websites. And that's across brands. So none of that's live yet. We just launched the first phase of the Gibson app, which is in phase 2, it'll have contained shopping in there. Right now it's Gibson TV, and it's really about this tool that we've been developing for a year and a half with a team of music scientists in Sweden that developed a technology that uses audio augmented reality to listen to you playing and adapts a lesson. So rather than watching a video and trying to figure it out and rewinding the video and trying to do it again, this technology, the reason it's revolutionary is because you don't have to do that anymore. It listens to your playing, and if you're not doing it right, it'll show you a different way to do it. And so you never have to touch it. It uses augmented reality, and it's a real two-way experience. And so we just launched the app with that technology, and we thought we were going to get, I think the initial 30-day objective was 30,000 downloads, and I think we're on to about 180,000 downloads in the first 30 days. And so it's been almost eye-opening to see that there's such a big demand for that. And it just amplifies all the other tools and resources. And so we still work with Marty Schwartz, who is a great teacher online on YouTube, and Rick Beato, who does a lot of great stuff on YouTube. And so they're all part of the family. This provides another tool to engage people directly. So in our omni-channel experience strategy of how we engage directly with our fans, this is all part of that.
No, it's fascinating because, as I sit here, I guess my one thought is, what does the e-commerce website look like, and how is it going to evolve over the next 2 to 5 years? And you're describing ways in which it's much more of an interactive versus just, let me just look for content.
From transactional to an interactive experience.
Exactly. And then at the other hand, part of our mission is to help Nashville be the best place and start and grow businesses, and innovation is at the core of it. And here you sit, clearly innovative, forward thinking. So, and we're right here in Nashville. So I think that's exciting. There's another question. Yes?
A lot of folks in the guitar industry have been saying that the next Beatles is going to come out of China. And what do you think Gibson's role is in China or other markets? And how do we create the next generation of guitar?
We're actually the only brand that's in China direct. We set up our own company subsidiary in China and not partnership with a distributor. That was something that Gibson did right in the past, and it wasn't us. The decision was made that China was going to be a very important market for both sales but also talent, and so we have a great organization already there. We have our own Gibson company subsidiary in China. We actually just shot a Gibson, what's going to be the local version of Gibson TV icons with one of the local icons there. And it's primarily an acoustic market. It's about 90% acoustic and 10% electric. And so we're very focused on what we're going to do there. We just announced an acoustic limited run with a very young female artist called Orianthi, who was Michael Jackson's guitar player, and then Alice Cooper, and then she went on her own. And the demand that we're seeing for things like that, but particularly her signature guitar, the Gibson J200, has been insane in China. And so we did recently in China a Show Me Your Gibson and Show Me Your Epiphone campaign. And we had, for the combined Gibson Epiphone, we had 2.9 million submissions. Just think about that. 2.9 million submissions. It's like we're inundated, and we were constantly through all the local social channels that we have in China, we were showcasing them just to showcase our fans using our instruments. And we were the only brand, from Fender, Taylor, Martin, and Gibson that we went to Music China this past October. We were the only ones there. So we take it seriously.
Tom?
Thank you for being here with us today, and congratulations. It sounds like you found a great business, and like Jane's a passion project, but my question is less really about business. It sounds like music has been a huge part of your life. In the role that you're in now, is there anyone that you've got to meet who was really influential that you're pinching yourself like, gosh, I can't believe now I get to be with this person, or maybe even play with this person?
Yes. I started playing guitar because of Tony Iommi. And I really discovered when I was a kid, my dad had a big vinyl collection, and there was this record there that was still wrapped, not even open. And I looked at it, and it was like this crazy cover, eerie, with a church in the background, and something that a kid that was, 10 years old shouldn't see. And I opened it up and I put it on and I played that first song, Black Sabbath, and I was like, oh my God, I need to do this. I need to be able to play this song. And now I'm best friends with Tony. And we work with Tony, we text on WhatsApp. When he came to Nashville, I hosted him, we were at home. When I go to England, I go to his place, and it is surreal. Or working so close with Slash, talking to him almost daily, and he's our biggest partner, ambassador, and there's so many things that we do with him. And Jordan knows, my assistant's out there. She runs is a gatekeeper to my calendar, but I try to balance it because we need to be running a business, but they all want to talk direct, and so I gave her my phone because I'm expecting a call from Kirk Hammett any minute. So I told her if he calls, just step out and tell him I'll call around back. Metallica's in the middle of a recording right now, and we need to talk about a couple things. And so all the artists, whether it's those guys, Jerry Cantrell, Tony, and the list goes on, that have been a big influence in my musical. Adam Jones from Tool, who's one of my biggest influences. And we speak almost daily in the evenings. I was on the phone with him for about an hour last night because we're looking at producing a pay-per-view with him. It is surreal, but they also got to a point where what is most surreal is that they actually listen, and that they're leaving, for the most part, commercial decisions to us and to me. And I'm very respectful of that, and I really appreciate that they trust us, and that's why a lot of that community, and now by word of mouth in the artist community, has been such that they're coming back and they want to work with Gibson again.
Yeah, I think it's got to be exciting for them. Right?
Yeah.
That someone is passionate about it.
Yeah, and we put together an artist alliance, which is really for them to tell us what are they seeing and hearing beyond our business that we need to be incorporating in our business. And one of the most engaging one was the last one we had, where I had Rick Nielsen, Alex Lifeson, Slash, Jerry Cantrell. They were all engaging and talking. We were on Zoom, unfortunately, because of this situation, but they were all bringing ideas and say, like, if we do this, and what about that, and what if we do, this idea on a pay-per-view, or what if we do records, and so it's amazing, it's surreal, but it also just puts the level of obligation to give back to them and to pay tribute to them and do right by them. It just steps it up.
As you say that, I'm thinking almost any successful business, you listen to the customer. And if you can actually get relationship with the customer so that you can actually listen, and then the obligation to respond. Yeah. And so in some ways, that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
As you're talking, I'm thinking there are such similarities regardless of the business. Diversification, maybe getting out over your skis. Bringing it back to what is your core business, what are you really good at, what should you be known as, and then listening to the customer and responding to the customer.
Well, the customer is one thing, but the artists are the reason our customers play our guitars.
Right.
And so they've been carrying the flag, and so from early days of Nick Lucas and Robert Johnson and Chuck Berry and Sister Rosetta and everybody in between them and now, they've been playing Gibson guitars. Without them, we wouldn't be relevant. They made us relevant. And so this morning I got an email from James Taylor that I think, if I'm recalling it said we made a J50 for him, which his 64 J50 is the guitar you see him all the time with. And I was with him over the holidays, and he said, that's the guitar that's on all my records. That's the one I use, and it's the one you see him if you Google him. He's playing that J50, and he sent me a note saying, I received my J50, and it brought me back to 1964 when I bought my J50, and he told me on that email, it brought me to tears. And so that email that I got from James Taylor is the reason why we do what we do.
Absolutely. And I view the artists as customers, even though they're also the ambassadors, which are the reason, but they are clearly the people that have kept the brand alive, and then you all have been able to come in and almost bring it back home, so to speak. All right, Shelby, any others?
Yes, we do. We do have one. Of all the irons in the fire, what are you most personally excited about that's still on the horizon as it relates to your brand's impact and purpose?
I think we need to tell, as we, Gibson, need to tell a better story on sustainability. I think I'm excited about the next sort of level of storytelling about that, because we take that very seriously. We're working with a lot of farms that are planting for everything that we harvest. But I think most importantly, the story that we make instruments that are meant to last forever. If you look at guitars from the Gibsons from the early 1900s, I have in the vault the first mandolin that Orville Gibson ever made, which was in 1894, and it still plays amazing. It sounds better probably than ever. And I have the first guitar he ever made, and it sounds amazing. And that was in 1898. And so we make instruments. I mean, and if you don't believe me, try to go Google a Gibson a 1959 original Les Paul and tell me how much you would need to pay for one. So we make guitars that last forever. We still do it that way today. We don't use some of the chemicals that other companies decided to use that make it faster to make them. So in the decision we made early on was to make less guitars initially, take the production down. I know it sounds counterintuitive for business, but let's do less now to do more in the future. And now we're starting to see that, now that we've organized against that principle and the principle that everything that goes into the guitar has to be in service to sound, which was Orville's original philosophy, we then rebuilt production to do a modern day business that celebrates craftsmanship, and as a result of which our guitars are meant to last forever. We are sustainable in our DNA. So we need to tell that story. I'm excited about that. And then our extended group of partners, especially when it comes to woods, and how we've organized a team of wood scientists that are now working. It's crazy, but Gibson didn't have a wood team.
Wow.
Each factory were buying their own thing, and they had their own suppliers, and it wasn't organized. To your point, John. Another example. So we have a wood team, and we pay. We only work with farms that are harvesting, that are planting for everything they harvest for us. And so that's the next level of storytelling that we need to go to. And I think that's almost an obligation of every business now to think about what is your footprint and what are you doing about the future state of emissions and sort of environmental consciousness.
No, and I remember at the very beginning you commented that they ended up deciding to move to Nashville because of the craftsmanship and the talent here in building the guitars.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that is still, it's an art as well as a skill, and you all have kept that intact versus modernizing and trying to, be more efficient. It really is keeping it as the art and the craft that makes them so unique and special.
And if you haven't watched it, we have that 14 episode called The Process on Gibson TV, which is all about a cinematic approach on how we make guitars. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to do that. Initially, that was my first obsession, is to say we need to do this because everybody needs to be able to see what goes into making a Gibson guitar.
Mm-hmm. No, that's wonderful. All right, we're almost out of time. Shelby, is there any other question, or are we good?
We're good.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate everyone being here. I hope that you've enjoyed the conversation as much as I've enjoyed being able to talk and being able to go further today. So it's my honor.
Thank you.
And we as an organization are thrilled to host you and have you here. And we as a city are very fortunate to have your innovation, forward-thinking, exciting entrepreneur. It's in your DNA. And that's what we always say. That's one thing I think makes this city so special, is entrepreneurship is in the tapestry of this city. And you clearly epitomize that. So thank you so much. And thank you all for being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.